So we got the decks for the Nymph all cut. They've been fit already. There's the forward section. And this is the mid-sip section that the console is going to be on top of. This is ABX wood. This is not marine grade. It has 7 plies, nearly void free, sanded on both sides. It uses an exterior glue. We're going to be using Total Boat topside primer. Now this is my first time using this, and let me tell you, this stuff has some serious solids content to it. I've been stirring this already for a good 20-25 minutes, and you can kind of see the thickness of it. But when I first started, I mean, it was literally mud. All the solids were just basically in one clump. You can actually probably still see it on the lid. And it has a serious solids content. After talking to Jamestown, who is the distributor for Total Boat and the owner of Total Boat, they suggested that this be a great product to use to seal decking in an aluminum boat, rather than using the traditional epoxy, as it's much cheaper. It's about $40 a gallon versus $80 to $100 a gallon. It's a single part polyurethane high solid primer. It's high build. It can be brush rolled, sprayed. The first coat I'm actually going to thin with their special brushing thinner, probably about 5%. We'll see how it comes out. Like I said, it's pretty thick. And if I were to roll it on like this, I just don't feel that it would get the penetration into the grain, especially on the ends. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to mix some of that up, and then we'll see how it goes. So we got our mixing cup here. We're going to go 5%. So right here we got a 3-to-1 mix. We got 3-to-1, 5, 10. So we're going to put in 1 part of paint after stirring for about 30 minutes. Pour this in. Right to there. Of course, we're going to spill it everywhere. One thing I did do is knock some holes in the lip so that the paint drains back, which is always good to do. And a full gallon usually always tips. But that's why this is my work table. It's melamine, so everything comes off of it, nothing sticks to it. Probably enough grease on it to lubricate your trailer. So we're at right about just over 2 parts. So what I'm going to do with the brushing thinner, I have the gallon of it, and this does not pour very neatly, so I'm going to pour this into another mixing cup. And I'm only going to add probably, if we go to the 3-to-1 to 5% scale, I'm probably only going to add, well, actually if we go by that, I'm going to add 2 ounces. About 2 ounces, and like I said, it is messy. This can does not pour very well, but it evaporates pretty quick, and it works great for cleanup. So by volume in here, we got about 7 ounces of paint. So I'm going to start off with 1 ounce of the thinner. There's no exact science to thinning paint or mixing paint. You do automotive paint, you do by ratios and whatnot, but there's no exact. So I just want this a little bit thinner so that I get a little bit better penetration into the wood, just for the first coat. The second coat I'm probably not going to thin. I'm just going to apply it as is. I'm going to just mix this up, and that definitely made it a lot thinner. I don't know if you can see that, but slide this out of the way. Fortunately, I don't have my camera mount. I can't find it. So we'll go ahead and mix this up. And You can see it's quite a bit thinner already, just with 1 ounce to 7 ounces. So I think that comes out to be, I don't know, like 8% maybe. I don't want to go too thin. Alright, that seems pretty good right there. Just always scrape down the sides really good so you make sure you got everything mixed in there. And yeah, that seems real nice. Set that there. We got our trusty old foam roller from Jamestown. They gave me the first set of these for free. We're going to just dump it in our tray. Probably only about half of it. Just don't like to keep too much paint in there. And we get our chip brush that we'll just throw away. Now, one thing with these foam rollers is they actually lay paint really, really nice. Now, we're going to just start off kind of on the far side here. Hopefully you can still see it. And I kind of just want to see how it goes on. We're going to load the roller up. You don't want too much paint. Like I said, I want it to actually saturate. And let's see how it goes on. It goes on pretty well. I load it up all the way. And it's definitely, you can see it going into the wood. That was one of the key things that I wanted. One mistake that I see quite often when painting, especially rolling, is putting on too much product. To get your coverage, this paint, especially the wet edge, their topside paint, has to be applied very thin. And I see it a lot, guys always say, hey, why hasn't this dried yet? It's been 3 days. Well, that's why. You're putting it on too thick. And this stuff actually seems to be penetrating pretty good.
We're just going to kind of work it. And you can definitely see it going into the grain, which is really nice. That's what I was hoping for. That's the reason why it's in this first coat. Probably need a little bit more to cover this whole thing, but it's definitely a great paint so far. Get this edge done. Now I just got this up on some sawhorses so that I have access to it. As you can see, it's covering pretty good. Now you can definitely tell it's not full coverage with one coat. Maybe if I hadn't thinned it, but I'd rather have the penetration into the wood. And you can really see it working it into the grain. Put some more paint in the tray. Give it a quick little stir. And we're going to just dump the rest in. So what I mixed with the thinner and everything came out to about 8 ounces of paint.
But this one is already starting to dry, depending on the light. But it's getting there. So till it dries. All right, so we got our first 2 coats on. Did the forward section last, but it's still already starting to dry pretty well. You can see just a little bit of gloss still. But this one's starting to flatten out, and you can really see how it penetrated into the grain really well. I'm kind of happy with that. All right, that's good. Well, while we're waiting for it to dry, I figured I would talk about some of the products I'm using. So everything here is from Total Boat, which is through Jamestown Distributors. They're located in Bristol, Rhode Island, which is about an hour from me. So we already talked about the topside primer that we're trying out for the first time, but we figured we'd start off with some of their other products. Like number 1 is their aluminum boat etch wash, which basically is an acid for cleaning bare aluminum. And you got all your directions and stuff like that on there. Nasty on your hands. And then after your etch wash comes your next product. and that's the Aluminum Boat Barrier Coat Primer. It's a 3-to-1 epoxy-based paint. Basically, this entire small can goes to the big can. And this stuff is compatible above and below the waterline. And it is an extremely, extremely durable primer. This is probably, I don't know, the 8th or 10th time that I've used it. And this stuff sticks to bare aluminum. After you prep it properly, that's the key, is etch washing. If you already have paint on your boat that is not flaking, you don't necessarily need that, but you can still use this as long as it's sanded properly with at least 220 grit. This works excellent. Once this is hardened, because it's not a paint technically, it's an epoxy, so it doesn't dry. Once it's cured, not completely fully, but you can test it with your thumb by simply pressing into it, and it leaves a thumbprint, but nothing on your thumb, you can overcoat immediately right onto it. And overcoating I've been using is their wet edge topside paint. So this is a single part polyurethane. It can be rolled, brushed, or sprayed. For spraying, you need to thin it with xylene. I've found that about 20% works, 22%. I'm not going to say I have an exact science when I mix paint for spraying. I kind of just go by feel and experience. But they've got this in literally probably 200 different colors. This is the Fire Red, which is going to be for the hull sides on the Sea Nymph. I have some Flag Blue, which is going to be for the trailer. And this is the Blue Go White, which is going to be for the bottom of the hull. Also, since we were talking about the trailer paint, this is their Total Protect Epoxy Primer Barrier Coat for steel. And it's very similar to the epoxy that we're going to use on this, but this is a 2-to-1, and basically small can into big can. And we're going to just probably roll that onto the trailer. We already talked about the total fare. Of course, we got our good old flotation foam here. We all know about that. So let's see how we're doing for dry times. And it's getting there. You can see it's definitely penetrated. You can still see some of the grains of the wood. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. And it is almost dry to the touch. It is just barely leaving a little bit on my finger. So we're gonna go ahead and let that dry a little bit longer before we flip it. The forward section's still going, so we'll get there next. All right, I thought I'd talk about one more thing while we're waiting for it to dry. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is called a TDS, a tech data sheet. So this is going to go ahead and give you all the information about the paint, its compatibilities, and surface prep, application, and its physical data of basically what it is, how much solids by volume, the VOC components, the flash point, and everything like that. So every paint is going to have this, and you can go right to the manufacturer's website. And here's Jamestown's. Total Boat has their own website, but they're owned by Jamestown. And it starts off, it's $31.99 for a quart. Hold on. Let's actually... Yeah, that's the standard price. I thought it was in my commercial account. So a gallon is $85. And so far, we have used 16 ounces of paint and 2 ounces of thinner to coat these two pieces, which is pretty much almost a sheet of plywood. So it's got some really good coverage on it. Now we're going to use 2 coats. I imagine our second coat is not going to be thinned, so we'll probably get faster buildup and probably a little faster coverage. So I'm going to estimate we're going to use probably 32 ounces of paint, which would be a quart, to do both of these.